everybody, and welcome to Grimwit with Dimwits. I'm T.
And I'm Blondie. And we would like to give another listener shout out to the city of Spencer in Iowa. Again with the whistles.
Spencer hates us now. And we're going to kick it up a notch, and we're going to include a country this time. The country where we have the most listeners, as of right now, is the UK. Hop up, cheerio.
He's going to go, doo-loo-loo-loo-loo.
Mind the gap.
I love that.
I do too.
Oh my gosh.
Mind the gap.
So are we going to address the anger elephant in the room with you the other day?
We were having so much fun, but you have to bring it up.
Of course I do. That's my job. So I get paid the big bucks.
Look, the only reason there's an elephant in the room is because there's people out there who seriously do not know how to drive. Okay?
Okay. Before you go any further, you said the only reason there's an elephant in the room. I swear I thought you were going to say, because you're sitting here.
Oh, no, I wasn't going to say that.
That was good, though.
Yeah.
Okay, continue. My bad. Continue. The road rage elephant.
The road. I wish I had an elephant. Okay, I would have had that elephant trample over that woman's car because, whoo, she got me mad.
You think?
Well, actually, this has happened twice. You were on the phone with me one time, unfortunately.
And I just sat there quietly like a little church mouse listening to you explode.
We were talking normally. I was trying to be good. I was trying to be patient. But okay, so when I go to work, there's not just one roundabout, just so everybody knows why I was so frustrated. There's a double roundabout. So from a bird's eye view, it's like a figure 8. You have to go through one, and then you go through and you have to go through the other one. I, of course, take this in and out. I'm used to it, but there are so many people who honestly do not understand how a roundabout works, and it drives me insane. I've almost been hit many times, and I've been good, but that day, I just had it with this lady because not only was she driving crazy, but as you and I were talking, she was slowing down, and when I looked down to see how slow I was going because of her, I was going 13 miles per hour, okay? And I couldn't take it anymore. So yeah, I kind of lost my mind. Oopsie.
Maybe she thought maybe she could only do a 0. She couldn't do an 8.
Well, she was like looking at all the exits. There's nothing there. It's not like there's a bunch of buildings around that roundabout. It's all open road. There's no buildings. There's nothing. Just pick an exit, know where you're going, be in the right roundabout, and go, I don't know, a safe 25, 35 miles per hour, you know? It's like, oh my God, I know.
I know. I was a little scared, I'll be honest.
It was just too many things in my brain. You and I were talking. I was trying to think of what we were talking about. I was slowing down. By the time I realized how slow I was going, I just went, lady, you're going to get me killed.
And that wasn't a crash. It was her head literally exploding off of its shoulders.
Yeah. There might be some brain matter in my car as we speak because, yeah, that was, I truly did lose it that day. And it took me a few minutes to go down. As you well know, because you were still on the phone with me. I was like, take a deep breath.
No, it was take a deep breath.
Take a deep breath. And I don't get like that. I think as time goes on, my tolerance for stupidity is at a -0 because I just can't hang. I can't hang with that anymore. Yeah.
Well, I'll give you credit because I don't know if I've ever been able to hang with it.
Being nice, overrated.
I think I perfected eye rolling.
Yeah, well, this was beyond eye rolling. I mean, oh man, I was just like, lady, if you want to get yourself killed and you want to do something, that's on you. Don't drag me slowly along with you. Okay, that's not going to happen. I just need to get to work. Get out of my way.
Apparently, she didn't know who was behind her.
Yeah, and that's like I said, that was the second time in the last week that the other one wasn't just a slow person. This other lady actually got into my lane at the very last second and almost hit my car on the driver's side. I was lit. I mean, lit. Like I had to stop and catch myself because I was so pissed that she would have hit me on the driver's side door perfectly if I hadn't veered and almost wrecked my own car. And then, of course, I pull up right next to her because I'm pissed, like I gun it, and then we get stuck at the stoplight together. I'm making myself sound like a maniac, but I was mad. And I'm right there with her at the stoplight and I'm looking at her and I roll my window down. I'm like, look at me. Look at me.
Oh, yeah. Like she's going to look at that possessed lady in the car next door.
She never looked over. And then this is where I caught myself because now I'm in an intersection where, not too far up from where it almost happened, but nobody in that intersection knows what just happened. So I look like the psychopath. It was like,
oh, no, not that.
First time for everything. But I was like, oh, yeah, I look a little crazy right now. Calm down.
Everybody's going, why is that woman's head spinning?
You see the camera phone start to come out.
Right. You need to go check out TikTok, see where you're at.
Right. And then this crazy lady who almost killed me is looking like the victim here. And it's like, oh, she's just sitting there minding her own business. And this crazy lady saying, look at me.
That's a good possessed voice.
Yeah, I know. I'm getting worked up just thinking about it. Okay.
Breathe.
Breathing because my blood pressure just went up. All right. I'm ready. I'm ready to be charming.
Well, there's a first for everything.
I'm ready to not be who I was this past week. This is one of my other personalities.
Okay, Sybil.
All right. I really am ready. But yeah, this was quite a week.
It sounds like it. It definitely sounds like it. So, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Let's get our grim on.
Let's do this.
In life, we all know that things must evolve and change. Most of the time, it turns out to be a good thing. But what if things have to change for everyone's safety? What if things change because a murderer decided to kill innocent people that they didn't even know? This is what happened in 1982 in Chicago and its suburbs. A common comfort that helped people feel better ended up becoming a faceless killer.
A common comfort? Oh God, please tell me it's not donuts. I know donuts will kill you eventually, but they usually take their sweet time.
Oh, yuck, yuck.
Please don't let this be a killer donut story. I've had enough stress this week.
Don't take away my donuts.
Please, God, please.
No, it is not about donuts.
Thank you.
You're welcome. In the 80s, it was still a time where people felt safe and secure in their neighborhoods. Residents knew each other and would wave or stop to have a conversation, an easier and trusting time in the world. Well, at least that's what they thought.
Yeah, people were still getting used to the idea of serial killers right about this time, so I'm sure they weren't mentally prepared for anything new.
It was an awakening.
Yeah, sounds like it's going to be something good.
It is September 29th, 1982. This was a normal Wednesday morning in Elk Grove Village. The town was waking up, people were starting their day, getting ready for work, and parents were getting their kids ready for school. In one home, 12-year-old Mary Kellerman was going through her morning routine, but wasn't feeling well, and told her father she had a headache. She convinced him to let her stay home and miss school. He told her to take a couple Tylenol. Following his instructions, she went into the bathroom, took the medication, and within minutes, her father heard what he thought was something falling in the bathroom. He went to check on his daughter, and she was lying on the floor. Her breathing was shallow, like she was suffocating.
Oh, geez.
He called paramedics, and once they arrived, they began to attempt to stabilize Mary, but everything they tried didn't work. She was rushed to Alexian Brothers Hospital. By the time she arrived, she was in cardiac arrest. Doctors did everything they could, but to no avail. Initially, the medical team believed that it might have been an aneurysm based on the fact that she had complained of a headache, but they were unsure. 12-year-old Mary Kellerman passed away on September 29th, 1982 at 9:56 a.m.
Wow, her poor father.
This very same morning, in a suburb close to Elk Grove Village called Arlington Heights, lived 27-year-old postal worker Adam Janis and his wife. Adam was off work and ran some errands with his wife and son. The day before, he was having some chest pains but felt better. They picked up their daughter from preschool and went to the local store to grab a few things, which included a bottle of extra-strength Tylenol. Once home and everything put away, Adam went to the bathroom and took a couple Tylenol. He emerged from the bathroom in pain and complaining of chest pains to his wife. They went into the bedroom. Adam laid down when his wife noticed his breathing was shallow. Paramedics believe that Adam had a massive heart attack. He was taken to Northwest Community Hospital, and while in the emergency room trying to be resuscitated, Adam Janis passed away at 3:15 p.m.
So whatever's happening seems to be almost instantaneous. That's unreal.
Yeah, you're right. Adam's family came to the house later that afternoon to help console his grieving wife. They were all gathered, mourning and crying, not believing what had just happened. As the day goes on, Adam's 19-year-old sister-in-law, Teresa, gets a headache. She goes to the cupboard to get out some Tylenol. While taking a couple of the pills, Adam's brother, 25-year-old Stanley, who also wasn't feeling well and experienced back pain, took a couple of pills as well. After a few minutes, the family is horrified to see Teresa and Stanley both suddenly collapse on the living room floor.
Oh my goodness.
The paramedics are called for the second time in one day to the same house. Now, I saw something about this. The paramedics were just confused about going back to the same house and actually thought it might have been Adam's parents possibly passing out or something along those lines, but nothing what was actually going on.
I'm sure that put them on red alert, having to go back twice and having multiple people with these weird symptoms.
Exactly. 3 different family members within, I want to say it was like 6 hours.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be scared to go in. It's like, what's happening in there?
They work to save Stanley, but he doesn't make it. Teresa is taken to the hospital and lapses into a coma. She had to be put on life support, not expecting to survive. Teresa passed away 2 days later on October 1st at the hospital. Stanley and Teresa were married just 3 months earlier.
Wow. And as we're listening to this story, it may seem obvious that what they all had in common was pain medication. The people in the moment, while all this is going on, wouldn't even have given that a second thought. I mean, who's thinking about Tylenol in that moment?
This is also in different areas. It's still in Chicago suburbs, so it is in different areas. So one doesn't know about the other. They
Yeah,
wouldn't think anything of it.
exactly.
The Janis family is in utter shock to have lost 2 members of their family and one on life support in literally hours. Authorities are starting to think that since all of these incidents occurred in the same house, that possibly it could be from an airborne contagion or a deadly environmental poison.
That's what it looks like, doesn't it?
It does, because 3 in the same household, really?
Yeah, and they all went down boom, boom, boom. That's insane.
The 14 members of the Janis family that were also in the house were taken to the hospital and put into quarantine. They spent the night, a sleepless night, at the hospital. They were afraid that if they fell asleep, they wouldn't wake up.
Wow. That's giving me Nightmare on Elm Street vibes.
September 29th, 1982, in the suburbs of Chicago has become a deadly day, with more questions than answers. And as the day progresses, there are even more questions to come.
So hang on. This all happened on September 29th, all in one day?
So far, all in one day.
Wow.
It's late afternoon in Winfield, Illinois, and 27-year-old Mary Reiner prepares to feed her son. But feeling a headache, she takes some Tylenol, purchased that day for some relief. Shortly after taking the medication, she collapses and started having seizures. Jim Branch, former Winfield firefighter, recalled, quote, "Everything we did to her, nothing worked. It was like all the things we learned in school. Nothing was working. CPR, blood pressure, everything was just off the scales. And we didn't know what to think or what happened here." End quote. Mary passed away. She was married and had 4 children. The 4th she had just given birth to.
That is so tragic.
Very. It was literally a newborn. And there was a part of the story that we saw that her mother-in-law was holding the newborn, just crying. She didn't know what to do.
Oh my gosh. I mean, not that I want to try to see any silver lining here, but I mean, at least she had given birth and she wasn't pregnant. I mean, that would have just been
Horrifying.
so much worse.
Just miles away is a community called Lombard. Mary McFarland, a 31-year-old single mother, lived there with her 2 children. She had a good job at Illinois Bell Telephone Store, with one drawback. The store had flickering fluorescent lights. This doesn't seem like a big deal. However, the lights caused its employees to have headaches. Illinois Bell knew this and provided a big generic bottle of pain pills, known as greenies, because of their color. Mary was prone to migraines, so instead of greenies, she would always bring her own preferred medication, extra-strength Tylenol.
How are they making people work somewhere with flickering lights all day? Isn't that used as a form of torture, like in the military or other countries or something?
Well, I don't think it's really like waterboarding. It was early evening on this particular Wednesday. While at work, she was having her dinner break with an employee. After she had eaten, she got one of her migraines and took 2 Tylenol. The coworker had gone back to the floor, but after about 10 minutes, went to check on Mary, who hadn't left the break room. She found Mary collapsed on the floor, tried to help her, and called 911. The paramedics asked the coworker if she had taken anything. She replied, "Well, yeah, she took Tylenol." Mary was taken to Good Samaritan Hospital, but never regained consciousness.
Wow. Again, this is on the same day?
The same day. It is about 9 p.m. on the 29th, and United flight attendant Paula Prince, 35, is headed home after a flight. She stops at Walgreens near her home to pick up a few things. She was still in her uniform of a navy pantsuit, heels, and scarf. She was spotted on the security camera at 9:16 p.m. One of the items that she purchased was a bottle of extra-strength Tylenol. Paula went home and got comfortable, like we all do when we get home. And as a woman, what is the first thing that comes off?
That would be the boob harness, in case anybody was wondering.
Little FYI. Since she lived alone, it is assumed that sometime between putting her nightgown on and removing her makeup, she took some Tylenol. She was found dead 2 days later on Friday, October 1st, by her sister and friend. When I saw this and the 2 days later, all I could think about was poor Joyce Vincent. Remember to always be aware and keep in touch with people.
Yeah, and even though, I mean, it was only 2 days, it's a good point because with her being a flight attendant, a lot of people might have assumed like, she was working on a long flight, out of town kind of thing. And it would be easy to just keep missing her, or at least thinking you're missing her.
Exactly. In what seemed to be luck, 2 separate things were occurring in an effort to find out why people were randomly dying in Chicago. First, Helen Jensen, a public health expert and Arlington Heights village nurse, was called in to help with the quarantined Janice family. She walked into the area the family was resting in and began to ask questions and what had transpired throughout the day. She had learned that the 3 family members who had collapsed had taken Tylenol. With the family's permission, she went to their home and began to gather everything she thought the 3 family members may have come into contact with: coffee grounds, home-jarred fruits, pound cake, and a bottle of Tylenol, including the store receipt that was in the bathroom trash can. She took all of these items to the hospital.
Smart lady.
Yeah. Second, colleagues of the local fire stations started to have conversations trying to figure out what happened to 12-year-old Mary Kellerman. During this conversation, it is mentioned that she had taken some Tylenol for a headache. This led to discussions with paramedics regarding the 3 Janice family members, and it was discovered that all 3 of them had also taken Tylenol, an interesting common denominator. Quote, when I opened the bottles and poured out the contents, they looked like your ordinary Tylenol capsule, that you would not know anything was done to them, that they were never tampered with. Once I compared the bottles, I looked at the control numbers and found the control numbers were the same. I immediately called back to my supervisor and explained to them what I was finding, end quote, said Nick Pichos, retired Cook County investigator. It was determined that some type of poison was the cause of these deaths. A number of poisons were considered because it was fast-acting. It's a little terrifying to know that there's multiple poisons to choose from.
Right? It's crazy.
Carbon monoxide, nicotine, and cyanide. Early on, carbon monoxide and nicotine were ruled out, which left cyanide. We all know cyanide is a poison, but how it works is it releases hydrogen cyanide gas, a highly toxic chemical asphyxiant that interferes with the body's ability to use oxygen and can cause seizures, cardiac arrest, and respiratory failure. Potassium cyanide is a salt similar in appearance to sugar that is highly water-soluble. Cyanide also has the faint smell of burnt almonds, only detectable by 60% of the population. You do know I'm going to smell every medication before I take it now, and hoping I'm in the 60%. Of course, I totally know you are. You're like at the top 10%.
Damn straight. I got a nose like a hound dog. I could get a job at the airport as a sniffer in a heartbeat.
Okay, I'd like to see that, actually.
On all fours.
Although, how is that different than any other day?
Right.
Not knowing how cyanide had gotten into the Tylenol capsules in different towns in Chicago, a press conference was called, and it was announced that in 2 separate cases in Cook County, Illinois, cyanide was found in Tylenol. They urged everyone not to take extra-strength Tylenol until they could find out what the extent of the contamination was.
Shoot, I wouldn't be taking anything. No pills, no M&Ms, no birth control, no nothing. I'd be skinny and pregnant.
Okay, we'll just move along. We'll let that one go.
Just saying.
The media coverage was constant, and it was all everyone could talk about. A news report. Live on Channel 5. This is the 10 o'clock evening news. If you have any Tylenol headache products in your home, do not take them. That warning comes from the area health officials after tests determined that cyanide-contaminated extra-strength Tylenol capsules caused several deaths in our area.
That's very effective. If I heard that, I'd be like, yep, all over that.
Johnson & Johnson, the maker of extra-strength Tylenol, didn't want any more lives to be put at risk and had all the products taken off the shelves in Chicago.
That was really responsible. You know, they didn't have to do that.
They didn't have to, but if any more people died, at that point, once they knew, they're going to be pointing the finger.
Yeah.
The city of Arlington wanted to make sure everyone knew not to take the painkillers. Officers were assigned to go up and down the streets in patrol cars using their loudspeakers, making the announcement. They would knock on doors and go to apartment buildings, hitting all the buzzers, making one big announcement, telling the tenants. Besides the police, the cities had volunteers going door to door and handing out flyers.
I'm extremely impressed with how proactive everybody is.
A multi-agency task force is formed. They try to keep the panic to a minimum by explaining that if you have a bottle of Tylenol and it looks affected in any way, do not take them. That just by looking at the capsule, you cannot tell if they are contaminated. Open the capsules, and if there appears to be gray crystals in the white powder, or if there is a bitter almond smell, they are contaminated. If swallowed, you will know within minutes to an hour if they contain cyanide. I don't know if that announcement was supposed to reassure, but I wouldn't be taking any just to test it out.
And who's even going to open it up and look at it, smell it? Everything is going in the trash, every single bit of it.
And I don't know if I'd put it in the trash so much as if I would take it to the police station so that if it did contain cyanide, it didn't get out. You know what I mean? It didn't get out anywhere else.
Yeah, but can you imagine everybody taking bottles of pills to the, I mean, they're not experts. Who's going to take all that apart? Just dump it.
Yeah, you're right. Just throw it away and don't even ask any questions.
Heck yeah, not worth it.
The task force grew to 200 officers and 40 chemists. The chemists started testing the bottles and found that potassium cyanide had been put into 4 lots with control numbers MC288 through MC2884. The blood tests on all the victims showed that they had taken a dose 100 to 1,000 times the lethal amount.
Of cyanide?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah. There was still widespread panic and hysteria. People started to believe they were poisoned, even if their bottle wasn't in the control number series. They were even going to the hospital, even if they didn't have any symptoms. The investigation starts with the obvious: Johnson & Johnson manufacturing plant. But after reviewing their strict bottling procedures, investigators determined that contamination had to have been done after shipping. Next, investigation shifts to the distribution centers, but the bottles arrived sealed in boxes before arriving to the centers, so they were dismissed. Still no answers where the cyanide came from. Johnson & Johnson recalls nearly 31 million bottles nationwide. Police were sent into stores to remove them, and everything Tylenol related was taken out of the hospitals.
That's crazy because hospitals use Tylenol like candy.
And they charge you $12 a pill.
Right. It's so dumb.
Even though Johnson & Johnson was not at fault, they did whatever they could to prevent the loss of any more lives because of what was in their capsules. It cost Johnson & Johnson over $100 million for the recall. They also offered a $100,000 reward for any information leading to the person or persons responsible.
That was very smart of them to be so proactive because people were never going to trust this company again, and they're huge.
They got a lot of praise for that.
Yeah.
Chief John Fellman, former Arlington Heights detective, is quoted as saying, quote, "We had a serial killer that was able to kill a lot of people in different geographical locations in a subtle manner that didn't leave a lot of clues or leads for us. It was a new concept of investigating." End quote.
And it sounds like it was a new concept of killing.
Yeah, exactly. Authorities figure out that the poison capsules were bought from 5 different stores, expanding a 30-mile radius. It was speculated that the bottles were possibly shoplifted at one store, contaminated, then placed at the next store. There was no rhyme or reason to which stores were picked. The task force began looking at who could have contaminated the bottles. They investigated disgruntled employees, former employees, and retail outlets. Authorities also thought that maybe the killer might show up to the funerals of the victims, so they went to observe, looking for anyone that seemed to be out of place or to see how they acted, if it was something other than mourning or paying their respects, but this didn't shed any light on who it might be.
I didn't realize police really did that. I've seen that in the movies, where they go to the funeral and try to see if they can catch the killer, but impressive to see that they did this in real life. Maybe that's even where the movies got it from. I don't know.
They do that at crime scenes too. They look around to see if, the killer's there to observe his work.
Yeah, yeah.
They also went back to the Walgreens where Paula Prince purchased the poison Tylenol that ultimately killed her to see if they could go over the surveillance camera footage, searching for anyone before or after her that seemed to go to the medicine section multiple times. The task force went to the other locations as well to obtain their surveillance footage, but unfortunately, a lot of the footage had been taped over or didn't produce any new leads. Tips had been coming, and authorities followed up on anything viable. Then on October 13th, a tip was received about a man named Roger Arnold, 48. He was an employee of one of the distribution centers. He was brought in for questioning, but was held on weapons charges. He had an arsenal of weapons. A search of his home showed a collection of chemistry books, with one giving detailed instructions on how to insert cyanide into capsules. But after 3 days, Arnold was released due to the police unable to link him to the Tylenol contamination.
What are the chances you're going to find a guy who's a suspect and he has a book telling you how to insert cyanide into capsules? What are the chances? I mean, that's definitely the guy.
You would think. And you wonder, too, especially since he did work in the distribution center, what was going on in his mind?
Exactly. And outside of all of that, you never trust a guy with 2 first names as his whole name. That's just, everybody knows that.
We are sorry to any of the listeners that has 2 first names as their whole name.
Roger Arnold. Those names don't even go together right. He's definitely the guy.
And this is part of the speculation that they were talking about ruining somebody's life. Okay.
I'm just saying, they had him. They had him.
Okay. Halloween had come with no one in custody and no answers. Everyone was concerned with celebrating the holiday and tainted candy. Firehouses and hospitals urged parents to bring their children's candy to be x-rayed and examined before consuming. Then in November, authorities are sure they have the killer. Tax accountant James Lewis.
There you go. There's my point. 2 first names.
I knew you were going to say that.
I didn't.
He was a Chicago resident that had recently moved away. They linked him to a $1 million extortion letter that was sent to McNeil Consumer Products, the Johnson & Johnson owned company. The letter stated that if the monetary demand wasn't met, there would be more Tylenol killings. But after investigating, they found out Lewis was not in Chicago at the time the poison bottles were placed in the stores.
Now, how do they know exactly when the bottles were placed in the stores?
They're,
I mean, is that part of the, what is that thing called, like the serial code you were talking about? Not serial code.
the control numbers.
The control, is that how they figure out when that happens?
I don't know. I don't want to speculate, but I'm assuming they have to have some time frame. And he may have been gone for a year.
No, that's true. None of that's clarified, but I'm just curious. Like, how do you know he didn't put it there before and then not be in Chicago?
Don't know. Authorities were sure it was Lewis that was the killer, but couldn't prove it. However, Lewis did receive 20 years on the extortion charges.
That's awesome. Because you know what? If he inserted himself trying to get money after all this, he should have went down.
Especially if he wasn't the guy, you're right. If he's just trying to get money.
That's horrifying.
That's what doing taxes will do to you. Make you lose your mind.
This makes more sense now.
It was believed that even though they did nothing wrong, that Johnson & Johnson would go under. Tylenol was their biggest seller, and consumers didn't want to use it anymore for good reason. Some thought that it would come back under a new name, if at all. On November 11, 1982, the Johnson & Johnson's chief executive officer, James Burke, called a press conference addressing the public's concerns. Johnson & Johnson also released a commercial that acknowledged the tragic events.
I kind of vaguely remember that, them coming out and this being very serious and them acknowledging it. I thought they handled it very well, considering that none of this was their fault.
And I saw the commercial. I think it's on YouTube. I saw the commercial, since we were toddlers at the time. I only remember so much.
You're right.
But yeah, it was handled very well. A few weeks later, Tylenol was put back on the shelves, but in a new revolutionary medical packaging. Johnson & Johnson flat out said that if the seals are broken or the packages look tampered in any way, to give it to the store manager. It would become abundantly clear that no product on the market would be safe without some type of tamper-proof packaging. This is definitely why now we have 57 layers of protection to get into anything we want to consume.
And it can be literally something that's not going to hurt you. It's not worth anything. And you need a samurai sword to get into it. Every package should come with a samurai sword because it's ridiculous.
Those ones you get at Costco, the extra plastic on the outside.
Yeah. Yeah. Even the tape is hard to cut through sometimes. I'm like, how thick does this tape need to be for cereal? Come on, man.
How thick does this tape have to be to get into this tape?
Exactly. It's like they've gone a little overboard.
I get it, though. I mean, there are reasons for it. Things do change because something has happened. That deadly day on September 29th, 1982, still remains a mystery. With no new suspects or leads, the investigation grows cold, and the question remains, who and where is the Tylenol killer? To this day, the $100,000 reward still remains unclaimed.
And with all of the technology we have now, I'm surprised that they haven't been able to catch this killer. He had to leave. She had to leave. Fingerprints or something somewhere. It's been a while.
Maybe they didn't have enough physical evidence at the time.
Yeah.
In an interview on February 6, 2008, James Lewis was talking to FBI agent Roy Lane. Lewis describes how someone may have opened the Tylenol bottles, inserted the cyanide into the capsules, and put them back onto the store shelves. I found that very interesting that he has all these ideas of how it happened. And he even gave him, what's his name, Lane, gave Lane some pictures. One of them was a picture of it was drawing, not a picture of what looked like a block that had holes drilled where you could put capsules. So you could fill them and then take them out and put them together. He talked about wearing rubber gloves or using plastic bags on your hands.
Well, this type of crime, I mean, you don't have to be a brain surgeon to do this. I mean, you just have to be lucky, and he's lucky that people didn't keep the videos of, him going in and out of stores, and maybe they could have seen him taking something out of his pocket or whatever and putting it on he's just lucky.
Assuming it was him. They still believe it was him, but they can't prove it.
Right. But I mean, the fact that he would take a bottle, tamper with it, and put it back, that's not rocket science. Anybody could come up with that. So I don't think it really gives him more credibility, but the picture of the thing that holds the pills is interesting.
And he was talking about using paper clips. He said, everybody has paper clips. You can use the paper clips to open the bottle. You don't have to use your fingers. And it was a thing. It was very interesting. James Lewis always remained a person of interest in the Tylenol killings. He served 12 years of his 20-year sentence for extortion. Lewis died on July 9th, 2023, at the age of 76 of natural causes. A resident of Chicago lamented, quote, "I think our innocence was shattered back then. It was something that we hadn't experienced before. And since that time, we are so aware that there are people out there that will intentionally and maliciously harm innocent people, harm strangers for no reason whatsoever." End quote.
That was a really good story, really interesting. And I am surprised. I mean, even though we knew about this back in the day, I'm surprised they haven't gotten any closer to solving this.
They're still to this day saying, if you know anything, please let us know and we'll follow up on it. But unfortunately, after 40 years, was it 40 years? 82, so 44 years.
Over 40 years, yeah.
The chances of finding them, unless somebody comes forward, I think are very slim at this point.
Yeah, they don't seem to be any closer. And pretty soon, I mean, that person's going to be no longer with us. So
if it was James Lewis, that is the case.
Wow, that's crazy. And who would come up with this and why? I mean, just not knowing, not caring, the array of people that you could hurt, children to adults. He took out a lot of people that were very young, 19, 20s, 12. I mean, they had their whole lives ahead of them. It's unimaginable that anybody could be this cold-hearted.
This vicious.
Definitely the coward's way to kill.
Exactly.
That was a very good story, an oldie but a goodie. Thanks for bringing it up. Thanks for giving us all the details.
You're welcome.
And we'd like to thank everybody for being with us. Have fun. take care, and don't forget to let your grimaginations run wild.
Bye.
Bye-bye. We just want to thank you all for sharing your time with us. And if you'd like to send in your creepy little grim bits, we would love to hear your personal stories, interests, and suggestions. Please email them to grimwitwithdimwits@gmail.com. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram at grimwitwithdimwits, Twitter at grimwitwithdimwits, and Facebook, Grimwit with Dimwits. Join us every Monday for new episodes, and feel free to share us with your grim-loving friends.
We would really appreciate if you would take a minute to rate and review. 5-star ratings go a long way and would really help us out. Until then, we would love it if you'd come back next week to delve with us into the strange and unusual things we just can't wrap our skulls around.